So I'm here today to introduce you to our third big shared read together. But before I tell you what the book is, I want to talk a little bit about what we do. My husband and I are both English teachers, and we like to read together. We've done two big shared reads now. The first one was David Foster Wallace's Infinite Jest. We got a couple of our friends to read along with us and exchanged emails, but we also shared a video every 100 pages and invited you to read along with us as well. This past winter, fall into winter, we read Thackeray's classic novel Vanity Fair together. So far, the criteria for these books has been that they tend to be long, they tend to be complex in some way. Also that they're pretty famous, like we're not going to read anything super obscure, but they're also books that both of us have not read. And so that throws out a lot of classics of American and English literature because we're English teachers. So as we were thinking about what book we wanted to read together this time and invite our friends to read with us, including you, we decided we were going to look for a big book by a woman. It was really interesting how hard that was to do. Because first of all, we have that rule that it's a book that neither one of us has read before. So the big classics by women that you might think of, like Middlemarch and Uncle Tom's Cabin, are books that one or the other of us has already read. We've both read the Brontes, we've both read Jane Eyre, we've read Wuthering Heights, we've both read Jane Austen. I thought about Ayn Rand, but I didn't really know that I wanted to spend that many pages on her worldview. We thought about Dana Spiotta, who has a brand new book out. We haven't heard anything about it, and so we really wanted to choose something that had a little bit more classic status behind it, even if it's not the kind of classic that everybody reads in college if they take English classes. And let me just note that the reason we're picking books that neither one of us has read before is because part of the point of these videos that we're making is to show you how we talk about books. I think it's often hard for people who don't have training in English literature to know how to talk about a book in book club. And it doesn't matter what kind of book it is. It doesn't have to be a classic, but how do you go about talking about a book? And so one of our thoughts was that if we are really just like exploring and discovering the book together for the first time, those conversations will be more genuine, and you'll really be able to see how we talk about a book that we don't know very much about, and we're learning as we read it. With all of those criteria in mind, we got a little bit stuck on trying to figure out what we were going to read next. And as we were trading emails back and forth with suggestions, my husband mentioned A.S. Byatt. I've already read Byatt's most famous book, which is Possession. In fact, it's one of my favorite books. I'll do a video on that sometime because it belongs on my top 10 list for sure. But as soon as he said Byatt, I realized that on a recent trip to this amazing used bookstore we have in Connecticut called the Niantic Book Barn, it's like this warren of shelves that you kind of wander through. You could really literally spend the whole day there because there are all these little outbuildings full of books, and there's two other locations besides the main location. On our last trip out there, I was wandering around and I picked up a copy of a book by A.S. Byatt called The Children's Book. I said to my husband, I actually have a Byatt book that I haven't read yet, and would you be interested? So we did a little bit of research. We decided that this is a perfect choice for our next read. Byatt is a really important English writer. She's still alive and writing today. You can see this is a big book. In fact, when I picked it up at the Book Barn, I almost didn't buy it because I thought this copy is 879 pages long, and I thought that's like a big commitment. So I was really excited when Byatt came up in conversation because I think this is going to be a really fun read. So let me tell you a little bit more about A.S. Byatt and about the children's book. So Byatt is actually Dame Antonia Susan Byatt. She's really, first and foremost, at least at the beginning of her career, was a literary critic and a scholar and a teacher, and that really shines through in her novels. They're very intelligent novels. They often have an element of literary suspense in them, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what I mean by that in a minute. She's written short stories, she's written essays, she's written nonfiction books, so she's a very well-read, thinking writer, and yet one who also knows how to build an exciting story. So that's a really unique combination, and I think that's one of the reasons why I love her work so much. So A.S. Byatt started out as a teacher at University College in London, and then eventually left to become a full-time writer. She happens to also be the sister of the novelist Margaret Drabble, so this is a very talented writing family that she comes from. She wrote a couple of novels before her kind of breakout novel that shifted people's thinking about her from being a scholar to being a novelist. That kind of breakout novel was called The Virgin in the Garden. It was published in 1978. It was the first in a series of 4 novels, and that kind of cemented her reputation as a novelist. And then I mentioned a moment ago Possession, probably her most famous novel. It was made into a 2002 movie with Gwyneth Paltrow, although I wouldn't necessarily recommend the movie because the book is so rich and multi-layered, and also the surprises in the novel are kind of lost in the movie. Let me just read you a little paragraph on her, the characteristics typical of her work. This is from the website of the British Council. What they say is the novels and stories are rife with intertextuality and literary allusions and references to the discourse of fairy tales and fantasy literature, to literary and linguistic theories, and to literary history, most notably the Victorian era, of which Byatt has extensive knowledge. Her fascination for the 19th century also extends to its scientific and religious debates, and some of her fiction explores her interest in Darwinism. Along with all this, Byatt is also a masterful storyteller, creating fascinating, complex characters and compelling plots that combine social realism with literariness and symbolism. So you can see that makes her a pretty unique writer, and I hope that description is as compelling to you as it is to me. The last thing I'll mention about Byatt is that she was named by the Times of London as one of the 50 greatest British writers since 1945. So even though she's not a novelist who shows up on, school reading lists, so you wouldn't have read her probably in high school or college, she is a very highly respected writer, and I think you're going to love her. I'm really looking forward to reading this book. So let me tell you a little bit about the book. Obviously, I don't know a lot about it because I haven't read it yet, but I'll share with you a couple of more details about the children's book, which is the book that we're going to read. It was a finalist for the Booker Prize, and Possession, by the way, won the Booker Prize, but the children's book also won the James Tate Black Memorial Prize for Fiction. So it was critically well received at the time that it was first published. It came out in 2009, and I'll just read you a couple of the blurbs from reviews of that time to give you a sense of what the critics were saying about it. The Atlantic Monthly said, "It's a complete and complex world, a gorgeous bolt of fiction. The magic is in the way Byatt suffuses her novel with details, from the shimmery sets of a marionette show to clay mixtures and pottery glazes." So that attention to specific detail is one thing that I really love about her work as well. This book is set in the aftermath of World War I, and so the review by the New Criterion brings that up. It says, "A fascinating, complex, and above all, immensely vital age. With Byatt as a guide, we are in capable hands. Seldom has the impact of the tragedy of World War I been as powerfully dramatized as in this novel." Finally, if you'd rather take your cues from Oprah, the Oprah magazine said, "Spellbinding, alive, potent, Byatt is a master storyteller." So here's the blurb from the back of the book. "From the Booker Prize-winning best-selling author of Possession, a deeply affecting story of a singular family. When children's book author Olive Wellwood's oldest son discovers a runaway named Philip sketching in the basement of a museum, she takes him into the storybook world of her family and friends. But the joyful bacchanals Olive hosts at her rambling country house and the separate private books she writes for each of her 7 children conceal more treachery and darkness than Philip has ever imagined. The Wellwoods' personal struggles and hidden desires unravel against a breathtaking backdrop of the cliff-lined shores of England to Paris, Munich, and the trenches of the Somme as the Edwardian period dissolves into World War I and Europe's golden era comes to an end. I guess I was wrong about World War I. It's set prior to World War I. We're really looking forward to reading the children's book together, so I hope you'll join us. If you're coming to this later after we've already started or after we've already finished, that's fine. You can still go back and leave comments because I am always monitoring my comments. But it would be great if you are seeing this in real time and you'd like to jump in and read with us. Please feel free to leave your own comments in the comments section below, and we'll sort of loop you into the conversation. We're looking forward to reading A.S. Byatt's The Children's Book with you.